Good morning. Welcome back to the series of lectures on soft skills. Till now, you have learned how communication skills play a major role in making you as a suitable as well as a successful professional. Moreover, it also helps you improve your other skills. While you are learning soft skills, you are also enhancing other skills of yours which help you not only in your personal life but in your professional life as well. Till now, we have talked a lot about effective communication skills in various forms, verbally, non-verbally. Even while talking about non-verbal communication, we have also focused on how the various cues of non-verbal communication help you become an effective communicator. But since all of you either are aspiring job aspirants or you are working in a professional, or many of you might be students who are actually thinking of a bright, a radiant career in the days to come, will realize that you have to join an organization in some way or the other, in some capacity or the other. While in one of our previous lectures talking about classification of communication, we have given some inputs on organizational communication. But since all of you are going to join organizations, it becomes quite pertinent to throw some more light on what is organizational communication and how and in which way you are going to prove your mettle in the organization with the help of your communication. Of course, many of you will be curious to know how organization works, how communication is distributed, monitored, and how it helps in the running of an organization successfully and smoothly. So, before we go to discuss what actually is organizational communication, let us try to understand what is an organization and what exactly does it expect of a candidate, for that matter a professional. Organization can be considered to be a social unit of people that is structured and managed to meet a need or to pursue collective goals. When you join an organization, you join as an individual, but you also have to be aware of the collective goals of the organization. Every organization works in a direction with the help of a management structure and determines relationship between the various activities and the members by getting job allocation, by disseminating information, and by understanding their own roles, responsibilities. And as you move up the ladder, you are also going to authorize certain powers in some form or the other. But then in totality, all organizations have a particular aim. The aims of various organizations are different, but in truth, all the organizations work for profit. If it is a business organization, keeping into consideration the welfare not only of people at large, but also of its own employees. Moreover, when you are in an organization, it is actually the communication environment that becomes a must to show your caliber and to show how important you can be an asset to the organization. Hence, organizational communication, as you all will realize, in course of time becomes a very significant aspect of your personality, as we have discussed in our lecture on personality, how with certain skills of yours, certain traits of yours, you can prove that you are an asset to the organization. So, organizational communication is a process which involves the transmission and accurate replication of ideas, the dissemination of it, the promotion of it, the distribution of it, ensured by feedback for the purpose of eliciting actions which will accomplish, which will rather help in fulfilling or in accomplishing the goals of the organization. This is what William Scott feels. But it becomes quite mandatory to understand when most of you who are aspirants, who want to join an organization, who are looking for jobs, you of course would like to know what will be your responsibilities at workplace. But remember, when you appear at the interview, you appear for a particular post, and when you are selected, then you start thinking from day one as to what you are expected, what will be your responsibilities. Your responsibilities, depending upon your excellence or your specialization, will differ in one organization as well as in other organization. But then depending upon the requirements, as we have been saying, in today's world we cannot be confined to showing our caliber just in one area. We actually have to exhibit so many skills which are required today at the workplace, because you know, an organization is a combination of various people, and while you are dealing with various people, you ought to use your communication skills. And since we have been repeating time and again that no two people are alike, their tastes are different, their natures are different, their working styles are different. Hence, while you communicate with all these people at various levels, because you know in organizations there are a certain division of responsibilities and there are different channels also. You have to understand whom you have to respond, and while you are responding or communicating, you also have to keep into consideration the moods, the temperament, the behavioral pattern and the way of the person who is responding to you. An organization needs communication for effective management, because unless and until there is a management, and every organization has a core management team which they call IMS, Information Management System, because in organizations various pieces of information, various natures of information come in from all direction, which at times are to be realized, which at times are to be worked on, and that also by different people. Sometimes you may have to work alone, but there are majority of situations and circumstances when you are to work together, say in groups, and while you are working in groups, there are people who are having different background, different age, at times people of different sex also, people of different faiths, religions, and in such an ambience or atmosphere, when you are communicating, you are actually to create a sort of atmosphere, a sort of behavior, a sort of delineation, a sort of communication which suits everyone. Because while you are talking to your immediate boss, but then you also must realize that at times you also have to talk to people of other department, because communication is distributed not only among your group members, but also to other group members. That is what we have discussed when we are talking about communication flow. But here we ought to understand what actually are the functions of communication in organization. Remember, if someday or the other you happen to go to an organization, or say for that matter, if you visit a bank just in the early hours before all the operations start, you may find most of the people gathering at one place and taking either the notes or listening quite intently or with utmost concentration to one person. This is actually the entire plan of the day being discussed with the employees. The leader, say the CEO or the manager or whosoever may be at the helms of affair might be telling people what they have to do. So, in every organization you will find that there are certain functions of communication, and these functions of communication are forecasting. You know, from time to time, though initially every organization it will plan with a goal in mind, what it has to attain. But as the organization grows, as it attains maturity, as it becomes an authentic being or a part, the roles and the responsibilities changes from time to time. So, the first important function of every organization is forecasting. By forecasting we mean what we want to do and where we want to be. If you look at the history of majority of successful organizations, you will realize that they are so because they planned themselves to be so, and behind that, because you simply see the success but you do not understand what goes behind. So, behind that success there has been a lot of brainstorming, there has been a lot of contribution by several players. So, every organization starts with forecasting when it plans what are its goals and how the goals are going to be attained. But for that goal to be attained, one individual cannot work. Nowadays, where an organization, even 5 or 6 or say for example 10 or 20 people may start an organization. But as it grows, as it becomes a larger organization, it becomes very difficult to manage communication. It becomes very difficult for one person to see that everything goes well. That is why there is a distribution of work, that is why there is a distribution of function, and they divide their responsibilities, they allocate tasks, and you will find as it grows in time, it has several sections. You may find if you are working in an organization, you will find you have a quality control division, you have a personnel division, you have an HR division, you have account and finance, you have stock verification division. I mean, there are several. You have inventory. There are quite a number of divisions, and all these divisions, they not only communicate within, but actually they communicate across also. I mean, people of one division may communicate with people of other division. Sometimes in larger organization, you do not know each and every individual, but then the person who leads a certain division, he at times has to be in communication with the communication heads of different departments. Hence, it becomes very difficult. So, what happens in an organization is when you organize, and you organize people of different groups, people of different ideas, people of different sections, and for that sometimes the leader has to instruct, because ultimately it is the leader who will be responsible first. So, what the leader does is, leader sees that he communication atmosphere in his division or in his group is quite smooth. For that, at times he will have to instruct his employees, at times persuade, at times order, but this is all within. Outside they represent themselves as members of one group or members of one division, and for that a lot of coordination is required. Say for example, if the boss says something and you are not interested to listen, then what will happen? Or you are not in a position to correspond, you are not in a position to assist, you are not interested to carry forward what he said, because there is a network, there is a chain that we shall discuss later. And then finally, it is the leader who controls. That is why your leaders become a role model. And all of you, because you are all going to be leaders in the days to come, you are all going to be decision makers in the days to come, and you are learning stepwise. So initially you start from the bottom, but your expectations and your ambitions are to reach the top. So while moving from one step to the other, you have to cross several positions, you have to interact with several people, and all these are learning experiences which are going to help you in the days to come. So having understood the communication functions of organization, you should also understand what actually are these objectives. Why do we communicate? You know, many people often groan about having lots of meetings. Many people also complain that every now and then I am moving from one division to another. But this is important, you understand? This is quite important, because every organization would require, every organization will rather expect that it becomes successful, and at times there is a competition also among several divisions. So the basic motto is to increase the job performance of employees, and also updating of knowledge. I do remember that there was a time when we had to deliver lecture to workers of electricity division. We had at times to give communication talks to people from different organizations, and the basic behind was, the motto behind was, they actually want, and there are several workshops organized, there are several conferences organized. What are the basic aims? The aims actually are to update the knowledge of their employees. Moreover, when you are sent to a conference, you are sent to a workshop, you are sent to some workshop which actually are going to talk about certain innovations in your particular field. Now, so at that time you actually feel a sense of belonging, because you belong to a particular organization. And every employee, initially when you join because you have some particular aims, you want a sort of livelihood, you want a sort of job. But as you grow in the organization, and then you start feeling that you also require some space. You also require some sense of belonging. You want to be heard, you want to be listened, you want to be appreciated. And then finally, when you are in all these processes, your communication also helps you convince your employees about decisions. That is why when the leader briefs his employees, he actually sometimes, of course, he talks about the tasks of the day. He also talks about the goal of the month. Sometimes, they divide it into weeks and days, and sometimes into months, and sometimes into, say, biannually, sometimes annually. I mean, all these are the aims that are actually being decided, and that also in collaboration with the employees. But then, while doing this, they actually assign certain roles, and these roles are given to various people at various levels. Because, as I said, no one employee can accomplish every task, and one man alone will become an island. So what we require is, we require group of people and the coordination of all these people, and manager who is at the helms of affair, who is having the decisive power, he actually takes into confidence all his employees and empowers all his employees with information. That is why you might have felt at times that when the leader goes outside and he assigns the tasks, or maybe somebody who is next to him, so he tells him everything, because ultimately the organization should not suffer, organization has to move. So when you are going to join the organization, what you actually need to understand is, in the days to come, as you move up the ladders, there are certain roles, and your communication, especially your effective communication, will help the organization in a proper operation and management. But when it comes to role, what are the roles? As I said earlier, it is not one individual who can have the entire control, because there is a system, there is a management system, there is actually a structure, and the roles are, your roles can be interpersonal. So this interpersonal is when one person talks to the another, when two people are talking to each other, when more than two people also talk to each other regarding a certain project, regarding a certain assignment, regarding some very crucial matters. So the roles will be interpersonal. That is why you will find that the manager wants that every employee of his division or of his organization has to be informed. He talks to everyone, he tries, he rather sees that. And nowadays you will be quite happy if you move if you visit a good organization, you will find communication atmosphere is so smooth. Every now and then there are ways where you feel you are not felt alone. There are people to help you, and the basic aim of any organization is to ensure growth in a cooperative, in a competitive, in a sustaining atmosphere, where you have to make your voice heard by showing to the outside world the way you are progressing with your products, with your services, whatever you are specialized in. Then comes the informational role. Every employee has to have a lot of information about the organization, about the division, about the task, about the project that they are working on. So at times the leader will tell you, the leader will inform you, either in the form of briefing or in some other form. So you will have pieces of information. But remember, while you are having these pieces of information, you will have to concentrate fully, because at times it has so happened, you also might have come across, you might have realized that you attended the meeting, but when you are asked about, you actually are speechless. You start fumbling for words. That does so that you did not pay much attention to what was said. So you are not a single person in the organization, rather consider yourself that you are an ambassador, and an ambassador should know everything, because outside when you go, people may ask, and if you are not able to provide them the specific answers, perhaps they will feel that you do not belong. And then it is the decisional role, based on the communication from one person to another, one division to another, one group to another, from one head to another. So you have, as a leader, as you will grow in organization, you will become a leader. So you have to listen to. That is why, while we are discussing in the lecture on listening, what we said that at times you will have to listen even to the problems of your employees, because the employees may have at times certain hindrances which may affect the work atmosphere, and you do not want that. You do not want that. So you have to pay a patient hearing, and you as a leader, you receive information, You receive communication, you receive messages, you interpret that message also, and based on what is actually at hand or what is actually important or what is needed, you have to take certain decisions. So, you have certain functions as a leader to perform, and in terms of communication, it can be interpersonal. You have to give information, so informational role, and then the decisional role. Here all of us have to understand a little bit about the theory of human needs, which has been given by Abraham Maslow. You know, all of us are basically individuals. In truth, all of us are full of ambitions, all of us have desires, wants. So, when you join an organization, there are several stages, and Maslow says that in the beginning you actually require a physiological need. This physiological need is that you need food, shelter, salary. You know, when you get salary, the basic thing that you need is you actually try to see that you have a sense of belonging. This belonging may come only when you are financially sound. So, first is that the basic needs, food, shelter, house, everything, you know, clothes, and then you move towards, a human being moves from physiological needs to the self actualization needs. So, you have a physiological need, and then you want that you should have a sense of security and safety. You know, once you are financially capable, you can fulfill your basic goals. You actually want to have a sort of some standing in the society, and that is how you feel that you should be loved, you should be appreciated, people should require your services. So, when you are secured, you feel that you have, and not only the needs, you also feel that you have some social responsibilities. And as you grow, now a person, when his belly is satisfied, then comes other ambitions, and as he moves, he feels that he should stay somewhere, and then he develops a little bit of ego also, and this ego is that he also stands, he also exists, he also has an important role to function, and as it moves, then you start a need of self actualization. You know, you begin with physiological and you begin with self actualization, where you feel morality is important, creativity is important, you know, you should have a sort of spontaneity, you should have a sort of growth, you should have a purpose in life. I mean, it is more towards maturity and meaning. You also want, that is why, as I said, you start as an initial worker, and as you move up, who doesn't want to be the CEO? Ambition is everyone's slave. All of us are slaves to ambition. So, we also should know that every individual will have some ambition. When you are working in an organization, you have to understand. And then there are communication strategies in order to fulfill your needs, in order to fulfill the organizational goals also. You will find that in organization, communication flows. We have already discussed in the initial lectures that communication can flow horizontally, it can also flow vertically. I mean, sometime, majority of times you will find, if it is a traditional organization, most of the information comes from the top level, to the lower level, but that does not mean there are no other ways. People at the same levels, they also communicate horizontally, and at times, as one division communicates with another, I mean, they can also communicate crosswise. Two people in two different divisions may not need each other, may not understand each other, but they have to need at times, and depending upon the need, they have to communicate. But on some occasions, communication also becomes spiral. For example, when some policies, I mean the policies which are going to be beneficial for all the employees, these major policies are announced, say the hike, the bonus, no, some new things that are going to motivate the employees toward their further progress and all. So there are certain communication strategies which you require to know, because when you join an organization, the organization also takes care of your needs, because the leader who is at the top, he or she understands that you stand. Then you will find, because you have to communicate, you have to understand the mind of the people, and in this regard McGregor says that there are two management styles. One management style is the traditional management style, which actually believes that the workers, they simply require food, they require the basics, I mean the primary needs. They do not have any concern about the welfare of the organization. Moreover, they are actually treated according to the traditional notion of management. They are simply treated as labor or the resources. But McGregor says that the other style, which is the modern style, which most of you might see, the modern style says that there has to be a balance between control and freedom. It is not that all the employees are simply confined to their fulfillment of basic needs. Rather, they also need some sort of freedom, some sort of say autonomy, because they actually treat humans according to this notion. Humans, the workers, are treated not only as workers but as humans, and they also, like others, have some higher needs, higher goals. And that is why when communicating with them, it is not only that the leader uses the language of control, but then he also uses the language of persuasion. And not only uses, rather he understands, because unless he understands, he cannot use this language of persuasion. So we have already discussed what it is meant by persuasion. So trying to understand his needs, trying to understand where the gaps are, trying to understand where the roadblocks are. So this is actually the task of the leader to ensure, task of the manager to ensure that every individual had certain aims, had certain desires. And then finally, you will also find, because we have been saying that you need to understand how an organization functions. So there is actually communication will also be between the line and the staff management. The line people at the line management, they are the people who are the beginners, and especially they are the people who are actually the resources responsible for the basic company activities such as say manufacturing, sales. But then they require the support, they require the coordination of the other staff management who actually support them in their everyday functioning, and they work, they actually help them, they provide them services such as accounting, distribution, personal, and at times it is they who actually realize, and they work in close communion with each other. They actually provide a sort of assistance that the real worth of these line staff management are brought to the core management or to the upper level, so that they also feel that they are realized as important. And then, as we have always discussed, there can be say formal communication channels, but in majority of organizations nowadays there are certain informal communication channels, and these informal communication channels, they appear in different ways. Sometimes chatting, I mean casual chatting, sometimes grapevine, as we have discussed that this is an informal channel where people make a lot of whisperings, people make a lot of talk, because this gives them a sort of satisfaction, because this is one scope for them to, in a way, either to say something which may at times be rumors, but sometimes that may be very crucial also. So there are informal channels, and these informal channels, while many people believe there are management scholars, they actually counter the fact that they contradict the fact, they do not subscribe to the view that information received from informal channel, say grapevine, can be negative. You know, you hear a lot of things, but sometimes these managers who are extra cautious, extra vigilant, they also see to it that they take some information from the informal channel, which can also help them to be warned or to be ready for something which may be untoward, and that is actually a warning signal to them. Sometimes even it has been observed that some managers, they very deliberately throw some messages in informal channel, either to caution or to control their disgruntled employees. It is quite pertinent here to see what Kunj and O'Donnell say. The most effective communication results when managers utilize the informational organizational channels to supplement the formal organizational channels, because the basic aim of every organization is to reach its goal or to have a sort of fulfillment in terms of its goals, and for that at times this informal channel can be utilized. But we have to be quite cautious that not everything from the informal channel may be correct. That is why there is a lot of say filtering while we are taking information from the informal channel. But as employees in the beginning, if you are going to join, you have certain types of communication at workplace which you should also be very attentive and careful about. The first is statutory. I mean, here every employee in the beginning is told about what he has to follow. There are certain norms, terms and conditions of their service. Then they also get a sort of briefing about how they will have to work, what will be their responsibilities. They are also made accessible to major policies of the organization. In many conditions, they are provided with some informational bulletin, but there is another way of communication in the organization which can be considered to be a sort of crisis management communication, where when something goes wrong, people are called and then it becomes very crucial, and at that time every member of the organization, of course it is between the core committee members or core management system, so they think a lot about the crisis, and they finally, because no two individual can have the same idea, that is why they call an urgent meeting and discuss. Sometimes it becomes a discussion of very serious nature because some decision has to be taken, and that is why crisis communication becomes a communication of persuasion. It is actually, and the language used there is also a language not only of control but of caution, because it will have serious consequences in the days to come. So as an employee either going to join the organization or an employee in the organization, both of them have to be totally aware of how an organization functions, because ultimately the success of organizations depend upon how successfully communication takes place, and how either as a manager or as a co-manager or say as an employee, you are going to make best use of communication. Because remember, in a global world of today which is very competitive, we all want that our employees have to be satisfied, because a satisfied employee most of the time is more productive than a dissatisfied employee. The need of the hour thus is to communicate, and to communicate in a manner that everyone understands, everyone is cared, and everyone's ambitions are also taken into consideration, and to ensure that he or she belongs to the organization. The success of organization thus is the success of all employees, and the success, of course, this success counts. Hence, either as an employee going to join the organization or as an employee in the organization, please try and see that you understand the norms of the organization, follow the norms and contribute your might in the overall success of the organization. Thank you very much.